Hey everybody, it's been a long night and a little drunk, man. Just figure I come on here for a quick minute, spell or two, and talk about that Nintendo E3 experience. I would talk about their conference, but they ain't had one. Fucking imagine if some bitches. Fuck told them this is a conference show. Why wouldn't you have goddamn conferences, man? They're trying to be different. Different ain't always better. Sometimes you need to fit in, you need to fit in line in order to get with the times, intended. God damn it. uh hey, what's up guys? The Insane Game Freak here to talk about Nintendo situation. Um I think I've also spent a lot of time from yesterday about who I would think out of Sony and Microsoft did better, and I think Sony probably did better overall, objectively and bias wise. Objectively, in the sense of like objectively presenting games and stuff, because even though because as I said yesterday, the biggest flaw Sony's conference had yesterday was just the fact that a lot of their games aren't coming out this year, like at all. But I still plan to buy a PlayStation 4 versus Xbox, where they literally told me as long as I have a PC that's okay, that can run decently, I don't need an Xbox console. So Sony won, which really just leaves me talking about Nintendo as talking about Nintendo. This is what I never understood. People were talking about how I was so Nintendo and fanboy biased, but even last year I said the same thing. Nintendo had the worst E3, and it's the same for this year too. They had the worst E3. Although I would probably say their Nintendo E3 for this year was probably, I don't know if I said better, maybe. It was probably a little better, not by much, but probably a little better than last year. Especially primarily because last year had a lot of had hype behind it, whereas this year was really tempered. Like we already knew what was coming, so anything above that was kind of a nice surprise, which is kind of what some of the stuff was for today, where we didn't know about every single thing. We knew about some things, we didn't know about everything. So let's just kind of get into it. The first day was Pokemon and Zelda, and Pokemon was really interesting, and there was a lot of things I was kind of analyzing the fuck out of while I was watching it. Um, I'm not gonna go too much into it because a lot of the analyzation went over a lot of people. It's something that only like Pokemon fans would really notice, whereas a lot of casual gamers wouldn't notice all the little details that were different about the uh, Sun and Moon footage. But I thought that was really cool. Zelda, as someone who isn't really into Zelda, I would still say the Zelda footage was cool. This has probably been the most interested I have been in a Zelda title because it feels different and it feels like a more streamlined experience. I think, and from what I've seen, that seems to be the positive sentiment that everyone else is having. So that was the first day. The first day was really just Pokemon and Zelda. You may or may not have gotten burnt out on Zelda by the end of that day. I know people who weren't. I was kind of burnt out because, as I said, Zelda isn't a franchise I was like screaming my head off about. So it's like I was interested and it got me interested, but it's not one of those things where I'm going to be like dick riding the entire time. Um, but moving on from that, let's just talk about some of the games they talked about today, which is why I wanted to wait. And there was a lot of stuff. For one, we got some new games that we didn't know were coming out. For one, Mario Party Star Rush, which people have realized that the image that they're using for Star Rush is also the same image they used for like their Mario Spaghetti promotion stuff a while back. So, needless to say, the art assets, at least for the cover, is not the most original thing in the world. But the game looks a little bit more promising than Mario Party 10. The problem is that it's on a handheld, and also there's no online, so it looks like a step in the right direction. I don't know, but it's not anything that I'm super excited for. Yokai Watch 2, I never played Yokai Watch, but I never played Yokai Watch, the first Yokai Watch, so I didn't have any interest in that. We also got some smaller stuff like Box Boy sequel. We also got some more Fire Emblem, Tokyo Mirage Sessions footage, but that's on the same vein as something like it'd be on the same vein as probably the Lego Star Wars stuff for Sony, where like the game comes out literally like Tokyo Mirage Sessions comes out like next week. So I guess it's just one of those reiterating it just so you don't forget about it. But like in terms of me giving a fuck about the footage, I already had the game pre-ordered. There's nothing else you can do to make me like I can't want the game any more than I already do. If anything, you could ruin that. So that was just kind of there. We also got a new IP in the form of Ever Oasis, which looks very promising, but I'm not sold on it yet. I don't think it comes out until next year because it seems to have elements of like Final Fantasy mixed with like Animal Crossing mixed with like I don't maybe some Zelda elements. It seems interesting enough, but it's one of those games I got to see more of. I'm glad to see that they're still trying new IPs, although it's a 3DS title. So I mean I don't know. People's hype usually is tempered when it's a handheld new IP, but I always think of it this way: if it does well in the handheld, it usually gets a console upgrade boost. So, but EverQuest was interesting enough. I mean, Ever Oasis, I mean, it looks interesting enough, so I'm not like down on it if like, going off of that. We got some Pokemon Go stuff, which I'm interested in, but they didn't. The conversation was mainly more so on just kind of the development of the game, which is cool enough, but not like god tier amazing. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else I've missed. I think that was it. So I get and then obviously I'm dumb. I forgot. Color Splash. They talked about Dragon Quest 7. They gave release dates for most of these games, by the way. But they finally showed off more Color Splash, which was a game people were really wanting to hear about because they kind of announced it and literally we didn't get to see much of it. Color Splash. I, there's a decent amount of stuff I want to say about the game. I'm pretty in the middle with that game because it seems like it's still following like Nintendo's current philosophy towards Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi, which is to be forced in this little box of stay within what we've already used in the Mario Mushroom Kingdom universe and don't get creative. It seems like this one tried to differentiate itself more, but at the same time you can still see it's still stuck in that annoying box of only Mario Universe stuff. Don't make up shit like they were doing for the other games, which is a shame. Dragon Quest 7. I mean, I've never been into Dragon Quest, but I don't have a problem with trying it out. Although I'm probably gonna be burnt out with RPGs by the time it comes out anyway. Um, And so now we currently will have like 2 console Wii U games of main stuff, like October from Nintendo, which would be Tokyo Mirage Sessions, and which comes out next week and next Friday, and then you got Mario Color Splash, Paper Mario Color Splash, which comes out in October. So we still don't really have a holiday game, whereas like the 3DS got like 2 or 3 more games announced. Yeah, because Yokai Watch and everything. I kind of looked at their whole thing to just see if that was enough for a direct, and it probably would have been, but it would have been super underwhelming considering they only announced like there's only like 3 Wii U games that were even mentioned this year. One of which isn't coming out until next year, and the other one coming out in a week, and the other one coming out in October. So still gonna be a pretty weak holiday year. It's just that we have one other game that people thought was moved to NX, which is not true, but I guess the Zelda footage was cool. If I had to grade Nintendo overall, obviously it's the worst out of the 3. But it's not as bad as I probably thought it was going to be, considering I thought it would literally just be Zelda. So, meh. It's like literally how I feel about Nintendo overall. Meh. Because the stuff I was interested in, and then we obviously have new Amiibo, but that's not really game console related. I will say the Amiibo functionality in Zelda Breath of the Wild is the coolest Amiibo functionality I've seen in a game. I'm also hoping that those Super Mario figures that we're getting in like November, those better work with like Mario Tennis, Ultra Smash, and fucking Mario Party 10. Neither of those games I own, but it doesn't make sense considering some of those figures were actually teased for that game and like never came out. Also, no update on Smash and no update on Federation Force. I find that interesting too. Um, so it's pretty fucking mediocre overall. My expect honestly, if we didn't know that it was only going to be Zelda, this would have been fucking terrible. But because we knew this E3 was going to be lackluster, I can't be as hard on it because I knew what was coming. It's like saying it's kind of like it's not, but it's obviously the worst out of the three. Overall, it might be the worst two. I didn't see EA's, so I don't know. Um, I don't think EA's was great because I didn't hear anything good about EA's. So it probably is maybe better than EA's. Yeah, probably just better than EA's. It's still probably like the worst overall. And I mean, and if we're talking about, but that's on an objective level. Like for me personally, it's like Sony and Nintendo. Like it always is for me anyway. Because Sony still makes me like it's like this is what I understood. People were so mad at me yesterday, but it's like Sony. I said Sony won last year, and I said Sony won this year. People were mad because I didn't give them a fucking pass on like stupid shit. Oh, Hideo Kojima put out a fucking trailer for something, but you don't even know what the game is based on the trailer. And I get it. You want me? That's like when people got hyped about the PlayStation 4 being only like $400, and then they snuck in the fact that oh yeah, but you're gonna have to start paying for online now. People had to like that was such a fucking like a god tier thing. And the only reason why people thought that was a god tier thing was literally because your competition was doing it. So because you weren't doing something, your competition was doing it. That means I need to overly praise you for it when it was something that should have been done in the first place to have a cheap, affordable console, while at the same time not making me lose features. It's kind of like when I gave Microsoft props yesterday for the whole conference stuff, like one of their features being pretty much a Miiverse like function, and then also like adding background music. Only to find out from the 360 owners, like, yeah, that used to be a feature on the 360. It took them this long to re-implement it. Does that still count as a selling point? And then people are like, oh well, what's the big deal of Sony having? And you know what makes it worse? That Sony had games I was interested in. You know, they had Nier, they had Persona fucking 5, they had Gravity Rush 2, they had I think Tekken 7's on their console too. They had other games I was interested in. It's just the majority of the games in their conference I could give a fuck less about. But they have games I'm interested in. They just don't have games in their conference that I was interested in, except for probably Spider-Man. Spider-Man was like the only game I personally was interested in. But once again, there are still games I'm interested in. Oh, maybe Horizon. My bad. Horizon and Spider-Man are like the two games. Um, Nintendo, whereas with Nintendo, Paper Mario Color Splash is up in the air. The Oasis game, new IP, I need to see more of. Tokyo Mirage Sessions has been pre-ordered. Dragon Quest 7, I'm willing to try out if I'm not burnt out completely. Pokemon Sun and Moon was a day one buy, period. Legend of Zelda is getting real close to that. I am very interested in trying this one out and actually playing it all the way through. Um, those are the two console manufacturers I like the most, and they're the ones who make games consistently I like. Unfortunately, Sony, I tend to gravitate to their more obscure Japanese games they get than their actual mainline games because their mainline games don't really interest me that much. Not to say any of them were terrible yesterday, just not like my cup of tea. Um, but yeah, Nintendo's mediocre overall. Um, oh, no, I forgot. Oh, yeah, Rhythm Heaven Mega Mix got released today. Although people are still salty because they want the Mother 3 release. I'm pretty sure there's going to be another direct pretty soon because, and I know that might seem stupid, but we didn't hear anything about Federation Force, and then we got the NX stuff that's coming later on this year, so yeah. Yeah. Oh, so, yeah, Sony won this year. like they did last year, like I said last year. But you know, I'm a Nintendo who openly admitted that Sony won both years, and that's objectively. Personally, I still like Sony and Nintendo, and I probably would still say probably Sony probably would have, even bias wise, I probably would still say Sony has more games that I'm like definite into overall. But it's like the one nitpick I had about Sony was just that all their games, a lot of their games were slated for 2017. I mean, even Nintendo, and it's one of its E3s that people complained about it having delayed games. They weren't all delayed games. Like they were like it was like a good. It was about half and half. Whereas like for some reason with Sony, it felt like insanely lopsided. I mean, for God's sakes, I heard the God of War director wasn't even was having a hard time just admitting to committing to a 2017 release. Ugh. Yeah, my God. But yeah, that's really just my thoughts on Sony. I mean, on Nintendo and kind of E3 overall. Sony first, Microsoft second, Nintendo third, or dead last if you want to include everybody except for EA because I didn't see EA's. But I heard it was bad, so I'm gonna just throw out that. But yeah. Although I will say Ubisoft was too fucking long. My God, Ubisoft was so motherfucking long, and it was unnecessary. Because they dragged out stuff. We'll say Watch Dogs 2 looks better, though. Watch Dogs 2 looks way better than Watch Dogs 1. Which makes me interested in playing it. And no, it's not because of a black main character. It's just Watch Dogs 2 looks better. Yeah. Life's a gameplay to win. I don't have anything else to say. Now, let people call me a Nintendo fag in the comments like usual. Because apparently I'm a Nintendo fag even though I have a bias for Nintendo. That's a fandom. That's what fandom is. But I'm not so biased that I can objectively recognize that Sony did the best. But people want me to dick ride it. If I should have dick rided it, I would have been fine, right? Later days, guys. Later days. And if you get that reference, 90s kid. Although that show came out. No, that show came out. No, that show came out in the 2000s. You should still get the reference. Fuck it.